Okay, so let's remind each other about what's the deal with this whole mastermind thing. So the idea is that we bring a bunch of people together who are likely encountering many of the same things. Okay, people that are trying to learn the same scripts and organize their database similarly, and they spend each day in very, very similar ways with prospecting for buyers and sellers and going on appointments for buyers and sellers and these kind of things, right? So the idea is once a week, we could bring this group together to specifically talk about challenges that you guys are facing and of course celebrate cool things that are happening too. So with all that said, it has seemed like in the last little while, the primary thing that you guys have needed help with is contracts. And I'm obviously certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have about contracts. If you remember, hopefully by now, all of you guys are members of the YouTube channel and you're subscribers of the YouTube channel. Let me put him in. All right, so subscribers of the YouTube channel. And if you are, you'll notice that there are literally hundreds of videos in the YouTube channel that we have done since the first week in March when this whole thing started. Okay, so if you have questions about mock offers or pricing or buyer presentations, listing presentations, scripts, dialogues, objection handlers, putting together or understanding like FHA loan exhibits or conventional loan exhibits or any of that kind of thing, we have lots and lots of videos to help make sure that you know exactly what's going on. However, we still want to continue to do this, to help you guys, whatever that means. Let me try to make this.
I really love that you do that, Bill, because I was just watching the one from this morning that I missed because we didn't have power.
Yeah.
And so when I saw you guys were talking about the buyer presentation, I was like, damn it, that's the one I wanted to see. So I'm really glad you posted it so that I could watch it.
Beautiful.
Same here. Same here. Yep.
I tell you, I don't want to sound boastful.
Really sorry I missed that live.
I don't want this to sound boastful in any way, but every once in a while I get off the call and I'm like, that was awful. Like, I didn't do good at all, right? And today I got off the call, I'm like, I think I pretty much nailed that considering I haven't done it live in like 6 years. So, and I wasn't prepared for it because I thought somebody else was going to do it, and I didn't have any notes because I wasn't at the office, and nobody could hear me because I was in the wrong spot in my house. So if we've learned anything from this, it is that the more prepared you are and the more flexible you are, the easier life will be, right? So with all that said, the YouTube channel is completely updated, even the session from this morning, and I even posted the session from this morning in the WhatsApp chat as well. So that is a good example, in my opinion, on the way to go from the essentially intake appointment to the visit, right up until the time you would expect to get the buyer brokerage agreement signed. There's a pretty thorough explanation of the due diligence period, financing contingency, appraisal contingency, some discussions on what happens if this happens and what happens if that happens. So that should add some clarity to your arsenal. Okay. If there is a particular topic that either the videos aren't explaining and you need the information sooner, just ask away, and more than likely there is a video on it, you just didn't see it, and we'll get you all the resources you need right away. Okay. So with all that said, I want to thank you guys for being here today. And my initial thought was that we were going to spend a little time going through what basically comprises an offer. And I'm more than ready and prepared to do that, but I also wanted to make sure that since you guys are here and I want to reward you with whatever information you specifically like or want. So is there any why did you come today? What were you hoping to hear or learn? Let me make sure I can focus on that stuff.
I'm still a little bit confused with the whole do not call list because I got the list from the email, the office one where it's the giant list. Yeah. So when people are doing, because I've been doing just the farming just with the call list, just on the dialer calling, which I guess, yeah, I'm going to get in trouble because I wasn't checking those numbers. before I was doing that. So do we literally have, is there any program where we can just run a batch of numbers through, or do we have to search one by one? Because that's going to like take a lot of time.
I'm not aware of any program like that. I can also tell you that there are plenty of real estate agents that don't do that. I'm not suggesting that you don't check the list or that you do check the list. I'm just suggesting that I'm not making any suggestions. Okay. I know this sounds ludicrous. I know this sounds ludicrous. And I tend to be a risk taker. Okay. I could go make $40,000 by going to get a couple listings in the amount of time that it takes me to go look up these stupid numbers. So, are we ready to move on to the next topic? Look, I'm.
Point taken, Bill.
The list is legitimate. It is very serious. If you've been on any Keller Williams classes in the last 20 seconds, you will be reminded ad nauseum about the do not call list. And it's there because, and all this talk is there because people have gotten in trouble and faced pretty significant fines. Okay. It's just a risk, right? We take risks by driving to work every day. So it's all up to you. Okay. You know, a really good way to avoid the do not call list, just as another option, is don't call strangers. Call the people that already like you, right? Call business owners, call vendors, right? Meet people at open houses, right? It's really only relevant for like cold calling strangers. So if you're really hypersensitive to it and you don't like wasting your time by looking them up, you don't like taking the risk by not looking it up, don't call strangers, right? There is no do not drop a piece of mail on my doorstep list. So if a FSBO is on the list or an expired is on the list, nothing stops you from dropping off a little packet that introduces yourself. I can tell you what, there ain't no other realtors doing that, right? So if you're interested in separating yourself from the public, maybe that's a way to do it. Okay, make sense? Okay. Any other questions on that topic? All right. Who else has something they want to chat about today? And we'll cover contracts. Well, I mean, look, I'm wide open. This is the purpose of the mastermind is to learn and to share ideas. So I want to make myself available to facilitate any of those discussions, or you can ask me anything you want.
Bill.
Okay, I'll keep talking since nobody else is.
Ladies first.
Okay, so I was working on my buyer's presentation, and the one in Command that's like 28 pages, but then the one in Ignite is like roughly, I think, 10. Should I do a happy medium, or, because I feel like 28 pages is excessive.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Here's the thing is what it's not great at, either one of them, quite frankly, are trying to make sense of the documents that you should be reading and the documents that you should potentially show and give to the client, right? Like, to give you an example, the document that's like, what's the most important thing about this experience? Why is that important to you? What happens when that happens, right? You don't necessarily need to give that to the buyer, but you want to have it in your presentation, right? So the idea of a presentation is it's kind of gray, right? Because there's some things that you might physically hand to them and let them take with them as they when you part. And then there's things that you want to kind of do because that's like the script of the movie, so to speak, right? What do I say and in what order do I say it? Some of that stuff is stuff that you would give to them and some of it's not. So really think through, like, what do I need to have for my own notes? And then is there like a series of a couple documents that is like, top, 10 rules of home buying, which could be something like don't open up any new credit accounts, or don't go lease a car during the due diligence period, and like these kind of things, right? That stuff you might want to leave with them. Here's a slide on some of the marketplace data. That's a slide you might want to leave with them. But questions like, what's most important to you about this process, that's something you should have in your own notes, if you will. Does that make sense? Now, you also need to have enough questions asked of the buyer to try to figure out how they need to hear the information, right? So for example, if I know John in his previous life was a CPA, so he has a natural tendency to understand data. And there may be some exceptions to this, but John, you can call me out if you don't think I'm right. If you're going to make a big decision, one of the key, you're going to look first to the numbers, right? You're going to want to substantiate your decision with data, with evidence, with hard data evidence, right?
So that's my natural instinct, exactly.
That's my point, right? So you're going to say, you're going to want to see some data, right? So I want to make sure that I include that when I'm meeting with him. That's why when you're building rapport with people, you can ask them those questions so you can figure out how they receive information, right? If I ask Heather enough information and I see, that she, how do I want to say this? Let's say that I'm on Zoom with you and I don't even have to be on Zoom with you for the most part. Like I could tell by just talking to you that you are kind of like a creative person and you're talkative and you're kind of you're like you got a lot of energy around you, if that makes sense, right? So I'm not saying you don't make decisions the same way John does, but I would venture to say that you make more decisions a little bit more involving like your feelings.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
I totally do. Yeah.
You think that's the way Heather makes decisions better?
Yeah, I would think that she's a little, more emotional. I'm a little bit more analytical. Not that there's any right or wrong. It's just our first
of course not.
instinct.
But I need to know how she makes decisions, because if I just show her all the data, she's going to be like, dude, how many more pages is this presentation, Bill? You got to get out of here. I don't want to deal with you anymore. Like, is this what it's going to be every time we talk? Because if so, I'm going to go hire somebody else. This is painful. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I'm always going to put the effect on my kids and how they will feel above what the data says. Because to me, that weighs more than what the data results in being true.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to overpay for a home or that you don't want to know that I know the data. But I might come into, our meeting with a stack of papers. Hey, Heather, just so you know, I've done a lot of research, so here's my advice. You're like, please do not show me any of that. But I'm so glad you did that.
The main point, Bill, yeah, the main point, and this is one that I'm guilty of in my past presentations and past lives, know your end user.
Exactly.
And, yeah, know how they're approaching, the relationship.
Now, not to make this more complicated, opposites attract. So it's not it's fairly common to sit down with spouses that are very different from you. So you have to then figure out which one is really in charge. Typically, if you can't figure it out, it's the woman.
It's the woman, yes.
Okay. If you're having a hard time figuring it out, it's the woman. All right. But you're also going to see, like, I've seen a lot of not particularly pretty stuff when I've met with husband and wives, right? You get men that are incredibly dominating sometimes, like the women can't get a word in edgewise. Every time they come up with an idea, the husband slams it down. Like, I've seen some pretty nasty stuff. So, it can be challenging. We have to deal with some weird stuff sometimes, right? I remember one time I got the listing and the guy's like, look, my tenant's cheating on his wife with the mistress. So I need you to make one extra call before any showings happen by calling the tenant's wife to make sure she's not going to be around so she doesn't run into the mistress. And if you don't want to do that, you don't get the listing. I'm like, seriously? You see what I'm saying? Y'all are going to have a lot of fun doing this business. I can tell you that. All right. So with all that said, you got to understand personalities. I'll give you a couple more examples. Let's say you go into somebody's house and their house is a bunch of, plaques and diplomas and certificates and a deer's head and a hole-in-one certificate and all this kind of crap. Okay, guess what? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just telling you it's on the wall for a reason.
Sure, to be noticed.
They're proud of it, so talk about it. If you don't talk about it, they're gonna be like, dude, that guy didn't say anything about my hole-in-one. I think I'll hire the person who did. And it's not a commentary in your presentation or how professional you are or how experienced you are or how well you were dressed. It has nothing to do with that. It could be something as small as, did the dude talk about my hole-in-one? Yes or no, right? If you walk into somebody's house and it's perfectly arranged, you got a person that really likes order in their home, right? So they're going to make very logical, strategic decisions more often than not, right? You walk into somebody's closet and you see the white shirts and then the off-white shirts and then the light gray and then the medium gray and then the little darker gray and then the darker gray and then the light blue and then the darker blue. Guess what? They're very rigid, right? You go in there and you move a blue shirt, ooh, man, that's going to send that person off the wall, right? So keep everything in order. They want to know what's happening next. You see what I'm saying? Okay, you go into somebody's house and everything is very colorful and things are everywhere, and that's a very free-spirited person. You're going to have to get into their heart. They don't make decisions with their head. They make it with their heart. You follow? As I said earlier, gosh, God, this business got almost nothing to do with anything other than psychology. Make sense? Okay. John, did that address your question? Or I think it was Heather's question, actually.
Oh, it was Heather's question. Yeah.
Okay. John, what was your thought?
It did.
About that?
No, you were. It sounded like, hey there. It sounded like you were about to say something when we let Heather go first.
No, actually not. No, actually not. No, just
David,
kind of agreeing. And
did you have a question?
Me, no.
David, did you have a question?
Yes, Bill.
All right.
Bill, today we had, yes. I had a question about the, there is the situation like that you working with the buyer and you wanted to, somehow motivate buyer more to buyer have the more motivation to be ready and go and that make the decision to go forward. So sometimes it seems to me to some buyers like oh well, it's too many people bidding the house and they give up they give up. So what's your suggestions to how what approach is better, how it's the handle situation like that to make them to the more motivated to go forward? I know this is like the psychology,
yeah, there's certainly psychology involved, but you might need to revisit two primary things. One is their motivation, right?
Mhm.
So just so I want to make sure I'm still accurate on a few things. Number one is you said you wanted to purchase before the end of the year. Is that still correct? Okay, and we said that we would need to be under contract by this day in order for that goal to be realized. Is that still correct? Right? So you got to go back and make sure that nothing in their motivation has changed. And that also may be a sign that they weren't paying attention when you discussed the market, or you didn't discuss the market, right? Where you're saying, hey, I want to let you know in your price range, 45% of homes are selling at list price or above list price. And I mentioned that to you at the beginning. You told me you were aware of that, and you told me that you were willing to take action that's going to cause you to be successful. And what we're experiencing is exactly proof of that. So let me ask you a question. If you want the best opportunity on the marketplace, I need you to understand that when you think it's pretty, other people are going to think it's pretty. And if you're not willing to give the seller the best terms and price and package, you're not going to win. So I'm not suggesting you take any additional risk than you want to, but I do need you to understand, if you want to buy in this environment, this is how you're going to have to do it. If there's a reason that causes you not to be willing to do this or interested in doing this, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to lose every single time, because there'll always be somebody that's willing to pay more or give better terms. Okay. I wish I could find, we're just not in that market, right? This is an incredibly strong seller's market, and here's the data to prove that. Now, what do you think about this data? If they're not listening to it coming out of your mouth, get them to say what they interpret, right? So then you could say something like, here's some data that suggests that a balanced market is 6 to 7 months of inventory. This is suggesting we're at about 1.3 months of inventory. This is a slide that's suggesting that, nearly half of the buyers in your price range are going to pay list price or above list price. Seeing all this information very clearly, right? What do you think about this? By the way, seeing all this information clearly, that is a language pattern, okay? You're doing something called, that's an assumptive presupposition. I know that's a mouthful, but what you're doing is you are causing them to assume that you're right by saying that this data is clear. Follow me?
Yes.
So what's happening is it's one of two things. Either the guy doesn't understand the market, or he's just not willing to behave like a winner in this market. The second thing you can't fix, other than explaining to him more the first thing. Right? I said, look, I got to be honest with you. I really don't like it when my clients fall in love with a house and then I can't figure out, I can't get them into it. And so I'm going to tell you right now, I would rather us put all of our effort into winning than having to prove to you with a real life example of a home that you really love that you're going to have to be aggressive. So can we just pretend like we failed on a home that you didn't really like, kind of in theory, so that you believe me? Because it happens every day. I don't want you to lose this home. Now, if you tell me this is not the home for you, we'll quit talking about it. But you're in love, which means of the 8 billion people in the entire world, you need to give that guy more than anyone else is willing to give him. Okay? You are the highest bidder on planet Earth. And if you're not, you ain't going to get it. And sometimes they have to hear it that way for them to apply logic, because oftentimes they're emotional, which means the logical part of their brain isn't working, right? So you counter emotion with logic, and you counter logic with emotion. What are you hearing?
Yes.
Make sense?
Yes.
All right. Who else has a question? I'm hoping this is helpful for you guys. If there's any patterns that you're seeing, it's that now keep in mind, this is, 15 and a half years of being in the business and, going through probably an ungodly amount of, training and, masterminds and mentorship and coaching and leadership. And I mean, ALC, I've been involved in a lot of things to get to where I'm at, right? I'm just throwing a lot of these ideas out at you so you can kind of see everything from a slightly different perspective. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. What else are you guys struggling with? Is there a contract that you want me to review? Is there a presentation or a
one more thing
to review?
Can I ask you, Bill, one more thing?
Yeah, talk just a tiny bit louder if you could then.
Yeah, Bill, I wanted to ask you about the, when you make the offer and your buyer deposit the earnest money, how explain your buyer to what situation he can lost the earnest money? How many like the wrong things he can done to lost the earnest money? This is do I need to explain this that during the pre-presentation or during the making the offer? What how handle that?
Great question. So you've asked a lot of questions. Let me try to get them one by one. Okay. So here's my general philosophy on explanations of stuff. Okay. I felt let me see how I want to say this. I don't know exactly if I can put my finger on why I decided to do this, but and it was probably stemmed from a limiting belief that I was young and stupid and didn't own a home and these kind of things, right? But what I decided was that I was going to take a very educational approach to the business. And my job was going to be to teach buyers how to buy and sellers how to sell. And I was going to use my background of I studied economics and I studied psychology and I studied something called leadership and organization. So, I studied money and I studied people and I studied how the two blended, right? Which is a perfect match for real estate, although I didn't really realize it at the beginning. Okay. Now, I also realized that the more I explained to people, the more they trusted me. And I mean, I deserved the trust. I'm an honest guy, right? And I'm super hardworking and I'm not going to lead anyone astray. But they don't know that about me in the first 20 seconds I meet with them, right? So I'm going to build rapport by teaching them stuff, right? I have the heart of a teacher, as Dave Ramsey would say, right? So with that in mind, I found that if I was going to teach people about how this thing works, then I kind of had two opportunities to do so. Okay. The first opportunity was to teach them about things when there is no contract and no stress. Or I could wait until there is a contract or about to be a contract, and a lot of stress. That make sense? So my preference, my advice to you would be do all the explaining and all the teaching as much as possible before it's time to write an offer, right? If you watched my buyer presentation this morning, I went into a lot of detail about what you just asked me. So I'm going to encourage you to go back and listen to that. But in short, the more you can explain to the buyer before their stress, not only do they like you faster, but they also trust you faster, and you don't have to explain it again. Because, how do I want to say this? like I'm just gonna, I mean, I've been super real with you guys from the very beginning, okay? Showing homes is exhausting, okay? And writing offers is exhausting, or at least it used to be. It's a lot easier now. The last thing I want to do is miss dinner, miss putting my kids to bed, and explain all the same crap again right as we're about to write the offer again. And be up all night talking to them about earnest money. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to have already talked to them about that. Does that make sense? Like, we're going to have a limited amount of energy.
Yes.
So I want to do this stuff when, I mean, literally there were times when like I would go show 2 homes at like 6 o'clock at night, and I would pray they wouldn't like any of them because I was so freaking tired that I didn't have the energy to write it up. Okay. Now that was very close to the moment that I was like, this is not a good attitude to have. I think I need some help. Right. Yet I had to get there first. Does that make sense? All right. So that's kind of the framework in which I'm going to answer this question. Okay. Let's talk about earnest money for a second. Earnest money is negotiable. It is generally around 1% of the sales price. There is no requirement that it be 1%. Sometimes it's more, very rarely it's less, definitely not drastically less, right? Maybe, you know, $200,000 property, earnest money of $1,500 or something, but there's never going to be like a $400,000 property with earnest money of like a couple $100 or something. No way. You want to brace your buyer to expect to pay about 1% in earnest money. Okay. You don't deposit the earnest money until you have a binding contract. Okay. So, the earnest money, if at all possible, I would like them to write the check if they know they're ready to move forward with the home, because everything that they do with their hands and a writing utensil solidifies your relationship more and more. Okay, make sense? So the act of physically signing something is much more impactful than the act of digitally signing something. Okay, we're about to go back to onboarding in paper. Even though doing it online is a lot more efficient, 95% of the time they don't read anything. And there's a lot of things that need to be read. They're much more likely to read it if it's written in print and they can touch the piece of paper. Does that make sense? Okay. With that said, the definition of earnest money is essentially just something of value. I mean, it could be a gun, it could be a statue, it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It's just something of value that both parties agree on. Now, with that said, most of the time it is money. Okay. So in the contract, you would say, buyer will pay, let's say, $3,000 in earnest money. And then right below it, it says, who is it going to be made out to? Generally, it's made out to the buyer's broker, Keller Williams Realty Consultants. And then it has a couple of boxes. One that says, like, will be turned in within blank number of days from binding agreement, or it might say it will be wired in a certain number of days after binding agreement, or it might say has already been turned in. So you check the appropriate box, okay? If the contract never goes binding and you're physically holding a check, then you just shred it, or you call the buyer and said, you know, you gave me a check, it's for a contract that's not going to happen. Would you like me to shred this and mail it back to you, or shred this and hand it back to you when I see you next? You know, do you want me to toss it? What do you want me to do with it? Right. And do the right thing by disposing of it as they wish. Right. Now, when the contract goes binding, generally you have a couple of days to turn in the contract. To turn in the earnest money. And we have a procedure at the office where you're, you know, fill out an envelope and it says who the buyer and seller are and the property address and when it went binding and when the earnest money was turned in and how much it is and all that. And Mel or Lucy or Lee or one of the leadership will show you how to do that when you bring it in for the first time. Okay. Generally speaking, there are 3 different types of contingencies in the contract. And I spent about 15 minutes this morning going over these. So I'm going to encourage you to watch the video this morning. But it basically says, one is a due diligence period, one is a financing contingency, and one is an appraisal contingency. So if the buyer decides to leave the contract within the due diligence period for any reason, whether it's inspection related or otherwise, they would get their earnest money back. So as long as they unilaterally leave the contract during the due diligence period. Okay. Now it does, you do have to turn in the termination and the release, and then it usually takes a couple of days, and then they pop it in the mail. So like it's not instantly, but it'll get back to you. Okay. After the end of the due diligence period, there is only two, assuming that there's nothing funny going on in the contract, there's generally two different ways that the earnest money could be refunded. Okay. One is through a financing issue. Okay. So for example, let's say you have a 21-day financing contingency that expires on November 1st, yet the closing is not until November 10th. Okay. If the person loses their job on October 30th and therefore they can't get the loan, then they would be able to turn in a denial letter and get their earnest money back. If that same thing happens on November 5th, after the financing contingency is up, they're almost certainly going to lose the earnest money. Make sense? Now, with that said, in a perfect world, the buyer would like all those contingencies to take them through closing. The seller wants those numbers to be as short as possible. That's why you end up usually around 21 to 25 days or so. Okay. Now, there's a few things that you might want to coach your buyer about with respect to financing. Number one, no cash deposits without approval from the lender. Okay, no new credit accounts. I don't give a damn if Kohl's is going to give you 10% off if you get a Kohl's credit card. Do it another time. Okay. Don't be leasing any cars. Nothing big to change your credit profile. Okay. Those are generally, and don't switch jobs. My God, please don't switch jobs. Okay. So those are the big ones with respect to financing. Okay. If the other issue would be an appraisal, if appraisal comes in low and it can't be worked out, as long as it was done within the appraisal contingency time period, then you could leave the contract without penalty, meaning you would get your earnest money back. If you have a 10-day due diligence period and on day 14, the husband or the wife or whatever says, hey, I don't want to buy the home, I'm leaving. Your earnest money is in jeopardy. Now, the way that they say it in the contract, and this is kind of a bit in the weeds, but I want to make sure you understand this, is it's not a guaranteed loss of earnest money because the seller has an option. They can either keep your earnest money, and by keeping your earnest money, they lose the right to pursue a legal case against you. They could return, they could return the earnest money to you, even though you're not entitled to it, and retain the option of suing you. So it is not necessarily as simple as, oh, I'll just lose my earnest money. Okay. Now, the takeaway from that should be the earnest money should be big enough that it causes the buyer to reconsider the loss of the earnest money. So if I've got let's say a $400,000 house and I'm willing to accept $1,000 in earnest money, whatever. I make a couple $100,000 a year. I can afford a $400,000 house, $1,000. Whatever. You keep it. I'm not buying this house, right? That's the attitude. You don't want that. You want them to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose like a lot of money if I don't move forward with this. Do I really want to do this?" I've only had one buyer ever lose their earnest money, and they blatantly violated the contract, and everyone knew it. And they understood that they were going to lose their earnest money, and that was that. Okay. It only happened one time ever. Make sense? So, I do believe it's very important to explain all of that stuff, because sometimes you might get a sign call from somebody or meet somebody from the web, have a buyer consultation with them, ask some really good questions, take them right to the home they want, And then you're basically saying, okay, write me a $5,000 check. And meanwhile, you hadn't even known this dude a week, right? So that's why it's so important to show your expertise, right? To show them how you operate so that that trust can be built really quickly and that they don't hesitate to write a check to you because you've got their best interest at heart. Any thoughts or questions on that topic? David, does that address your question? I hope you heard that. Where'd you go?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, good. All right. For more information about the financing contingency and the due diligence period and the appraisal contingency, watch the video from earlier today, okay?
Sure.
All right, what else? Y'all having fun? You like real estate? Not having fun? What are you scared of? What do you love doing? Come on, talk to me. Who's doing what for the weekend? John, you getting everything charged up there at the office?
Pretty much, yeah.
Me
Two
too.
open houses for me this weekend, hopefully. So
Good. Okay.
we'll keep, yeah.
Very good.
They canceled school here again today, so my plans to go into the office if we didn't have power wouldn't have worked anyways because I had my kids. So it kind of derailed yesterday and today. So this weekend I'll just be playing catch up, basically.
Oh my gosh, I know. If y'all could see what was going on at my house this morning, y'all would have just been rolling over laughing. I mean, two kids at my daughter's school tested positive for COVID, not in her class, but in that is the threshold for them to shut down school for 14 days. One of the fathers of my son's classmates tested positive, so we're waiting on the test results for his his buddy in the class, and that'll dictate whether he can go back to school without a positive test or not, or a negative test or not. So his school's been out. My daughter's school's already out for 2 weeks. We spent the morning transferring 2 fridges and 3 freezers worth of food to a neighbor's house so that we wouldn't lose, all the crap in our fridge and freezer.
Yeah, we already lost all of our stuff, because our power's been out so long. I was like, we're just getting rid of everything.
Well, it's, we got to make the best of it, right?
Yep.
All right. What are we struggling with? Talk to me. I'm happy to end early, but I also want to make myself available to you since I promised this time. What questions do you have? Ask away. You must know everything about real estate, huh?
Yeah, for me, it's just continuing to find the people. I'm started my farming campaign. I'm getting the systems down. Really, I have working on the LinkedIn and Facebook social media, hammering that almost daily, and just waiting for those seeds to bear fruit.
Yeah, and they will blossom, John. They will. I promise you. It is. We are building a business, really, literally from the ground up.
Yeah.
And there's it's complex and it's challenging and it's got it's super exciting and satisfying in some respects, and it's super annoying and frustrating in other respects. And the beautiful thing is that when you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, you get to make all the rules.
Right.
The other way to make money is when you take a job and they get to make all the rules. Right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying many of us get into this business because we want control. So
sure. Big reason why I'm here.
The second Dave Ramsey quote I've given you in the last 48 minutes, and I'm not even that big of a Dave Ramsey fan, but we live like no one else so that we can live like no one else. Right? We put in the work today so that we can just get a bunch of come list me's later on. Right? We put in the work by attracting agents to Keller Williams so that we can receive passive income on the 21st of every month, right? And we can literally watch those people's lives change before us, right? I got people that I've sponsored at Keller Williams whose kids didn't used to be in private school and now they are, or whose kids, never been on vacation and now they have. Or the agents never thought big and now they can't stop thinking big, right? What else?
Bill,
Yes, sir.
what your thought about the market? Do you think to the price going right now, the price going higher and higher and higher? We're gonna to have after next 6 months stable market, like the balance market, or it's gonna to still going up and going up and going up? What your thought about that?
Good question. If we don't get significantly higher inventory, nothing's going to change. That is the biggest indicator right now. It's a supply and demand market, right? So we hear over and over
Yes.
and over and over again that, if no other homes were listed, there wouldn't be any homes to buy in about a month and a half. Okay, that is an unheard of seller's market. Okay, so if all of a sudden there was like 6 times the number of homes listed next week than has been listed in any week this year, they'd probably all get gobbled up. Okay, so I don't see any super significant shifts until there's more homes on the market. Now, what could cause more homes to go on the market? A couple things. Civil unrest, election results people don't like, right? People that ultimately were on some form of a forbearance program that now all of a sudden have to settle up, right? People that thought they were going to get new jobs, didn't get new jobs, and they can't afford their homes, right? Now, there's a lot of indicators that it's not going to be like it was 11, 12 years ago, because let's say I own a $400,000 home and I bought it 7 years ago and I owe $310 on it. I'm not going to let it go to foreclosure. I'll just sell it for $380 tomorrow and move on with my life. Right?
You've got equity that you didn't have 10 years
exactly.
ago.
So if I've got equity, it protects the market to some degree, right? And it protects each of the individuals to some degree. Problem that happened 11, 12 years ago is no one had any equity because either the market had gone down or they had sucked it out with a refi, right? Or a cash out of some sort, right? And so because people had no equity, they were free. They say, whatever, I'll just let the home go. Got nothing here anyway, right? So a lot of the indicators are nowhere close to what they were 10, 12, years ago. If it was me and I had the ability to, and I didn't have any like super pressing, lifestyle need, I would personally not be buying right now. Right. The last report I heard said that 30% of mortgage holders and roughly 30% of renters are behind in their payments right now and are on some form of forbearance. So my hunch is that this record low inventory is not going to last forever. And when it starts to pick up a little bit, it doesn't mean we're going downhill. It just means we're going to start to shift from a super strong seller's market to a less super strong seller's market, right? It ebbs and flows. I personally, if I've got extra cash, I'm stashing the cash, because in a couple years, whenever the market goes south again, or not south, but it's not a super strong seller's market, maybe it's a super strong buyer's market, that's when I'm stocking up. Make sense? Now, I bought 14 months ago or something like that. I bought at the time, basically the height of the market, because my family had a pressing lifestyle need, right? So it doesn't mean that it's a horrible time to buy. If your family needs to buy or move, then it's not a horrible time to buy. You just need to be smart. You just need to buy the best thing on the market for your needs and work with a great realtor who can secure great terms for you, and work with a great lender who's going to be able to secure great financing terms for you. That's the best you can do. But understand that when this is a little off topic, but it kind of goes along with our theme right now, which is just the fact that there is a transaction that happens at all is indication that there's a difference of opinion of value. This kind of can touch on the appraisal topic too. So John, let's say that you own a $400,000 home and I'm going to buy it from you, and the market says it's worth 400,000. So that's the number we come to. Now, I buy the home from you. That is a clear indication that I find that home to be worth more than 400.
You think it's a good value? Sure.
Because I've determined that if I've got $400,000, I could buy a lot of homes, right? But I'm picking yours because I was unable to find a better value. Now, you have exactly the opposite.
Exactly the
feeling,
opposite. I'm thinking,
which is you'd rather have the money than the house.
Yep. And I'm thinking, man, I found this person that'll pay $400,000 for my house.
Exactly.
I better sell it. I better jump on that.
Exactly. So that's why, like, you want to make sure when you're when you're talking about the appraisal with your clients, it's not about, oh, this man or this woman is going to come in and, you know, they're going to say this is worth 400 and no, there's no debate about it. No, this is simply this person's opinion of value on this day. And by the way, they're not even buying it. Okay. So that is an objective evaluation. The other two people involved in the transaction are subjective, right? I want a house and I like this one. So could I give you 401 for it? Yeah. Cause I don't want to get back in the car anymore. Right? Will I sell it to you for 400? Yeah, I guess I'll fix that wood rod. I just don't want to start this process over again. See what I'm saying? When I bought my home, I'm in a very specific neighborhood, and I wanted that home, right? Well, let me rephrase that. My wife really wanted that home. Okay. And here's the deal. We bought it off market. It was a friend of a friend. And our negotiation strategy was as follows. All right, Noah, what do I have to pay you so that you don't show this to anyone else? Now, I didn't overpay for the home, but I gave him what he wanted, right? I didn't grossly overpay for the home. I probably overpaid a little bit, but I didn't grossly overpay. But the fact of the matter is he could have asked for more and I probably would have given him more. See what I'm saying? Because I fell in love and therefore I was a crappy negotiator because it was a very unique home exactly where we wanted to be for a variety of reasons. Okay. Now, the only reason he should have sold that home to me off market as a seller in a seller's market is because he believed that I was the only person in the universe that would have given him that. And I probably was. But at the end of the day, we were both happy, right? It is truly a negotiation, right? It's not supposed to be the buyer gets their pick of everything and the seller feels that they were in a boxing match all day and they don't win anything. It's supposed to be a win-win. So if your buyer, your seller thinks they're going to make 100% of the decisions and just eat alive the other party, they've got another thing coming. It's a negotiation. All right. Anything in particular you heard today that you didn't quite understand? Was this helpful? I know we were kind of freestyling it a little bit today. Was this helpful?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Very much.
Any last minute questions? All right. You guys have a wonderful day. David, can you give me like 2 or 3 minutes and I'll be right back for our session?
Sure. Thank you.
We'll see you guys soon. Have a great
Thank you,
weekend.
Bill.
Thanks, Bill. So long.